Why did you even apply to our company, which requires a college degree, when you're just a high school dropout? Your resume isn't worth looking at. You don't even have the qualifications to apply.
During the final interview at a top tire company, the interviewer, a graduate of a prestigious university, turned out to be my former classmate from high school who always looked down on me.
Decisions made, no job for a poor high school dropout. Got anything else to say?
The sound of tearing paper echoed in the interview room as the interviewer ripped up my resume. I was momentarily surprised, but then I smirked and retorted, "Good luck with your job search starting tomorrow." Huh? The interviewer looked confused, not understanding what I meant. Of course, he wouldn't understand now, but everything would become clear tomorrow, and he would be plunged into hell. I'm nervous. My name is Kevin. Dressed in a suit, I went to an interview at a certain company. This company, located in a prime location near the station, with its own building in downtown, was overwhelming with its magnificent structure. I entered nervously and waited quietly at the reception. Entering with a student's mindset was a fresh feeling. I was a so-called high school dropout, having left high school prematurely. During my high school years, I was subjected to a lot of harassment and bad-mouthing from my classmates, which eventually led me to become a truant, unable to attend school. I reminisced about those days. I'll never forget the days of harassment from my classmates.
Kevin, you're so gloomy and weird. Don't look at us.
The ringleader of the bullying was Jim. His grandfather was a city councilman with a lot of power, so Jim thought very highly of himself. He had many followers, and everyone looked up to him. On the other hand, I was introverted and ate a lot due to stress, so I was a bit chubby back then. This made me a target for teasing and harassment from my classmates.
Hey, fatty, move. You're blocking my way.
Does it smell like pig here? It stinks, doesn't it?
Jim's cronies would say this while snickering and looking at me. Jim seemed to enjoy it, watching and laughing. But I, who had good grades, once scored 100 on a test. The teacher was happy for me, as if it were his own achievement.
Kevin, you got 100 again on the test. Everyone should take a leaf out of his book.
Come on, teacher. Why are you giving special treatment to Kevin?
We can study as well as Kevin, can we?
Stop making excuses and study, you guys.
This only made my classmates resent me more, and I became more isolated. Jim, especially, seemed to dislike my indifference to currying favor.
His dad's not around, so he's got it easy.
Must be nice having no one at home to get mad at you.
Maybe he's secretly a mama's boy. Haha.
The fact that my father had passed away became another reason for mockery. I gradually withdrew into myself due to the relentless teasing and harassment, eventually leading to my truancy. My mother tried to protect me by complaining to the school, but Jim, being the son of a local influential figure and having a good public image, was believed by the teachers. That's right, at school, there was not a single person on my side, not even the teachers.
You've done nothing wrong, so don't blame yourself.
My mother, Mary, respected my decision and said it was okay for me not to go to school. She took me out to lift my spirits, even taking me to her workplace, and had me do simple chores to build my confidence. It helped me so much. I can't thank her enough for her support during those times. Years have passed since those days of gratitude, and now thanks to my mom's introduction. I work as an office clerk in a small firm. The reason I'm interviewing now is that the form is dissolving, and I was referred for the interview by the office manager. As I sat nervously in the waiting room, a man noticed my anxiety and struck up a conversation.
Are you also here for the interview today?
Yes, you too.
Yes. It's strangely nerve-wracking before an interview, isn't it? My name is Mike.
I'm Kevin. Let's both do our best. Talking to Mike, a recent graduate, in the waiting room helped ease my tension a bit. Then, looking around, he whispered,
But this company, while its business is attractive, there's talk on social media about the interviewer's high-handed attitude.
Really?
Not to eavesdrop, but I heard everything. I'm Jake. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Jake, another candidate with keen ears. He joined our conversation, sharing a story about a friend who had faced intimidating remarks in their interview. The more we talked, the more anxious I felt, but I shook off the nerves and took notes of their detailed stories.
Notes for the interview?
Yes, I thought it might be necessary. I have a suggestion for both of you. As I explained my proposal to the intrigued pair, I handed them something, which they accepted and tucked into their pockets. Then, with nerves high, the interview began. The interviewer was alone, and his face was familiar. It was Jim, my former high school classmate who had bullied me. Noticing me, Jim smirked unpleasantly. He enjoyed the situation just like he used to.
Kevin, the high school dropout, long time no see. What have you been up to since dropping out of high school? A neat.
As soon as I sat down, Jim mocked me, but I remained calm. Meanwhile, Jim bragged about graduating from a public university and becoming the rising star of the company, even talking about succeeding his grandfather as a councilman. All unsolicited.
Hey, are you listening? Same old silent guy, ho.
Of course, I'm listening. Please, continue. Seemingly annoyed by my quiet demeanor, Jim's mood visibly soured, but I didn't want to add fuel to the fire and urged him to go on. Taking this as a cue to continue, Jim's mood changed completely and he happily resumed his monologue. As the interview neared its end, Jim, smirking again, posed another question.
Why would a high school dropout apply to our company, which requires a college degree?
I've written it in my resume, so it would be great if you could take a look.
Your resume isn't worth looking at, haha. You don't even have the qualifications to apply, haha.
In response to my calm demeanor, Jim suddenly grabbed my resume from the table and tore it to shreds.
No job for a poor high school dropout. Anything else you want to say?
As my resume fluttered around, torn apart by Jim, he grinned at my shocked reaction. But my surprise was only because I didn't expect my resume to be torn, as the rest of the conversation had gone as anticipated. I stood up calmly, forced a smile on my face, and said to Jim, "Good luck with your job search starting tomorrow."
Huh?
Jim, the interviewer, was taken aback by my unexpected words, looking utterly shocked. I left the place without further interaction. The next day, I was on my way to that same company, accompanied by my boss, David.
Wasn't he a former classmate of yours? You probably didn't want to see him, right?
David, who knew about my past, expressed his concern, but I shook my head. It's for work, so I won't be selfish. Besides, I'm not who I was back then. I want to teach him a lesson.
You'd be a scary enemy to have.
Initially, David looked intimidated by my determined expression, but in the end, he praised me as a reliable subordinate. He really is a dependable boss. I stood up calmly, forced a smile on my face, and said to Jim, David said that with determination as he knocked on the door of the CEO's office of the company where I had my interview the day before. Inside, CEO Michael was present. After seeing us, he asked his secretary to call the person responsible for the whole situation. Shortly after, Jim entered the room, his face pale.
Kevin, what the hell did you tell them at the company?
Jim, noticing me, rushed over and grabbed me by the collar.
Stop that, Jim.
However, after being sternly reprimanded by the CEO, Jim, who had grabbed me, glared at me fiercely and then roughly let go of my shirt. He sure knows how to obediently follow those with more power than himself.
Do you know why you've been called here?
Michael asked Jim, who responded with silence. Seeing this, Michael sighed and introduced David as a lawyer.
Nice to meet you, Jim. I'm David, a lawyer. We're here because several students are planning to file a lawsuit against the company for the mental distress caused by your oppressive interview techniques.
There seems to be some misunderstanding, Jim muttered, trying to downplay the situation. I didn't let him off the hook and took out a tablet I had prepared. I have proof of the oppressive interviews. I'll play the recordings from this tablet. I operated the tablet, playing each recording one by one.
You don't say much, do you? Aren't you told you lack personality? You're not pretty, are you? Shall I teach you how to be pretty? Oh, you graduated from that university. It's full of dummies, so you're probably useless for this company. Looks matter, you know. Ugly people should get plastic surgery before coming for an interview.
All these were in Jim's voice, and his face grew paler as he listened. The CEO's face was flushed red with anger. Although he hadn't known about it until now, he must be especially furious to have had such a person conducting interviews at his company. Of course, we have witnesses.
Please, call in those two gentlemen.
Understood.
Understanding the situation, the CEO instructed his secretary, who then left and returned with two individuals. Those two were Mike and Jake, whom Jim recognized and who had waited with me in the waiting room yesterday, each having their separate interviews. I had given voice recorders to these two gentlemen, who were also here for interviews. I asked them to start recording when their turn was close. Here's what we captured. I took the voice recorders from Mike and Jake and played them.
This is Mike. I was drawn to the attractive job description of your company.
You're dreaming if you think it's easy here. I'm strict, and I'll fire you quickly if you annoy me. Understand?
I'm Jake. I applied after seeing your job posting, eager to engage in this line of work.
It says here you have a good memory. That's it. Frankly, it's all about whether you can work or not. Well, you're from that university, so I guess you're useless, haha.
After playing each voice recorder and listening to the end, I turned off the recorders. Just like during my interview, both Mike and Jake had endured a barrage of harsh words followed by being subjected to Jim's boastful stories. As everyone's gaze turned to Jim, his face was sweaty, and he stammered in response.
This was all to test the students' resilience.
Some students have actually suffered mental and physical health issues due to your interviews. We have medical certificates to prove it, so we can't just write this off as a resilience test.
David then pulled out a doctor's diagnosis from his suit and presented it to Jim. Reacting impulsively, Jim snatched the diagnosis from David's hand and tore it up, just like he had done with my resume. I had anticipated this, so I informed him that we had kept the original diagnosis safe and only presented him with a copy. At this revelation, Jim's face turned beet red. He never learns from his own actions.
A high school dropout, huh? What are you trying to pull here?
Jim shifted his gaze from David to me, looking like he was about to grab me again. I think there's a misunderstanding here, so let me clarify. Yes, I dropped out of high school, but I went on to graduate from college.
Huh? What are you talking about? Have you lost your mind?
Jim, unable to comprehend what I was saying, tilted his head in laughter. I understood that someone with his limited understanding would find it hard to grasp. In fact, after dropping out of high school, I had taken the high school equivalency exam and passed. I then enrolled in a prestigious university's law school and later attended law graduate school. David was a friend of my late father and a lawyer. My mother had worked in David's office when I was in high school. During my truancy days, it was David who had given me small tasks at his office.
Hey, Kevin, you're doing great. You've got a bright future ahead of you.
I remember David being very kind to me, as I was allowed to come and go in his office from a young age, and he knew my situation well. My mom respected him greatly.
You can do it, Kevin. You'll pass for sure.
Encouraged by David, I completed my judicial clerkship at his office this year and successfully passed the final exams. David was overjoyed, embracing me as if it were his own achievement. I still work in his office today. Also, David occasionally gave lectures at the university as a visiting professor, where students approached him about oppressive interviews.
I'd really like you to go undercover, Kevin. How about it? Will you give it a try?
Me? I'm not sure. I don't have much confidence.
Don't worry. Just go for the interview and record it. By the way, here's the info on the interviewer.
This is... I was shocked to see the name Jim and his photo on the document. It was definitely him, the one who had bullied me in high school. David, please let me handle this job.
Well, you're suddenly eager. Do you know the guy?
David asked tentatively, and when I reluctantly confirmed, he started to worry and even considered calling off the job, which made me laugh. His reaction back then was quite amusing. It was undoubtedly Jim, the same person who had harassed me in high school. Several students who had been subjected to Jim's oppressive interviews decided to sue, and it was natural for me to attend the interview without raising suspicion.
David and I have known each other for a long time. I was surprised when he asked to investigate our company, but I agreed because such interview practices should not be happening.
Michael and David were acquaintances, and they had arranged for my undercover operation. As Michael informed Jim on this, his face turned even paler.
We, as a company, need to take responsibility for this. We intend to compensate the victims who suffered under your interviews.
What?
We will also hold you accountable, Jim. We'll seek damages from you.
Michael then announced disciplinary dismissal to Jim for causing significant harm to the company.
No, boss, I didn't mean any harm. I was just testing their stress resilience.
Weren't you just relieving your own stress? Plus, it seems you've been under a lot of stress from your gambling losses.
Jim was known to be an avid gambler, often pouring money into gambling. He was frequently irritable after gambling losses, seemingly taking out his frustration on interviewees.
Boss, please forgive me, it wasn't intentional.
If I forgive you now, more victims will suffer, and I can bear that thought. Sorry, but I won't budge on my decision.
But please,
Jim pleaded with Michael, but he was firm and unyielding.
Even if it wasn't intentional, that doesn't make it right. I want you to understand that. David, I'd like to officially assign this case to you.
In that case, how about assigning Kevin for this task? He was the one who went undercover for this investigation, and if you agree, Michael, I'd like to recommend him.
Of course, that's fine. If you say so, I trust Kevin can handle it.
Leave it to me. I was determined to fulfill the task I had been given. Jim was still in disbelief, shaking his head in denial. He really doesn't know when to give up. Should I also sue you for defamation and insult? I've suffered mental and physical distress.
you don't look like it at all. Besides, there's no way I'd lose to someone like you, Kevin.
Shall we proceed with the legal process?
You can't do that. My grandfather won't allow it.
Jim threw a childish tantrum before fleeing the CEO's office. We were utterly dismayed that a man nearing 30 still relied on his grandfather, the city councilman's influence. Our investigation revealed that Jim had joined the company through his grandfather's connections. Because of this, he continued to act arrogantly, just like he did as a student. After he moved to the HR department, his attitude became a concern for the company, especially since it was affecting its reputation among job-seeking students. However, there was no concrete evidence at the time. That's why I collaborated with Mike and Jake, who had their interviews on the same day as me under the guise of a proposal, and had them carry voice recorders in their pockets. As expected, Jim's abusive language during the interviews served as evidence, leading to this lawsuit.
I can't believe the guy interviewing with us was a liar.
Do you actually have a lawyer's badge or something?
Right after leaving the CEO's office, Mike and Jake bombarded me with questions. It seemed like it was their first time meeting a lawyer, and they looked at me with eyes sparkling with admiration. Of course, here it is.
Wow.
I showed them my lawyer's badge, which I had kept hidden during the undercover operation, eliciting cheers from them.
I should have aimed to be a lawyer too, especially after that interview. I'm not sure if I passed. The CEO had surveillance cameras in the interview room, so he'll review the footage and inform you both of the results later.
That's great.
Mike and Jake were visibly relieved, making me feel somewhat guilty for involving them in the investigation. I reattached my lawyer's badge and apologized to them sincerely. I'm really sorry for dragging you both into this without revealing my identity. I made you both feel anxious, didn't I?
What are you talking about? If you hadn't gone undercover, we would have been unfairly rejected based on that interviewer's whims.
Seriously, we owe you big time for saving us from an unjust rejection.
Hearing them say that made me feel that my undercover efforts were worthwhile. Seeing their relieved expressions, I felt glad that I could make them happy, and at the same time, relieved that we were able to prevent any further harm.
Since we're all here, how about having lunch together?
That sounds great, Kevin. Will you join us?
I'd love to. After checking my watch and seeing I had time before my afternoon duties, I agreed to join them for lunch. It felt like making new friends. Their friendly demeanor naturally brought a smile to my face. Later, I learned that Mike and Jake were successfully hired, while Jim was officially fired. I conveyed the news to them, and they were overjoyed. They thanked me again, so I emphasized that it was their own abilities that led to their success. Still, I bet they were really thrilled to be hired. Later, they invited me out for drinks, and I eagerly anticipated it. Meanwhile, Jim hadn't shown up at the company since storming out of the CEO's office. His parents had handled all the formalities with the company on his behalf. I wondered why he hadn't taken responsibility himself, but with the company's official decision, there was nothing more to say.
I heard Jim got fired from the company.
It's only natural. Honestly, it's a relief.
Apparently, Jim's arrogant behavior at the office meant no one was sorry to see him go. The atmosphere in the office has improved a lot thanks to you. I'm really glad I left it in your hands, Kevin. Thank you again. The CEO expressed his gratitude to me over the phone. I could almost see his happy face as he spoke. Just when I thought everything was settled, the next day brought a new development. The next day, Jim and his grandfather, James, visited David's law office.
I heard there's a lawyer named Kevin here. Could I meet with him? I'd like to discuss the matter regarding my grandson's commotion.
James, who arrived with a burly man in a black suit, asked for me. Surprised by the sudden visit, I braced myself, but James bowed to me sincerely.
I'm sorry for what my grandson did. I wasn't aware of his actions, and as his grandfather, I feel responsible.
I had heard James was a city council member, but he was more humble than I expected. He had believed in Jim, who was academically successful and good at maintaining appearances, and was unaware of the harassment Jim had inflicted. It seemed that Jim had been silencing others and using his grandfather's influence to his advantage. I never thought he would use my influence to bully others, James explained.
After asking his friends and local acquaintances, I found out he's been a fool. First, I want to apologize to you for the harassment since high school.
Saying so, James bowed again. Jim, though sulking, bowed slightly as well. I wish Jim would learn from his grandfather. Please raise your head. If you keep bowing, I feel like I'll be struck by lightning. I intervened, fearing James would keep bowing indefinitely. James then told me he intended to retire from politics because of this incident.
And I want to ask David to be my successor.
Me, I'm honored, but
David was planning to close his office and run for election, but being James's successor was beyond his expectations. His reaction showed he hadn't fully grasped the reality yet.
Is everything okay with this? Shouldn't we discuss it more?
You're famous as the only trustworthy lawyer in town, well-connected and well-regarded by citizens. There's no mistaking your qualifications. I'm not making this decision lightly.
James mentioned that since he was retiring, he would ask his supporters to endorse David. James's son wasn't interested in politics, and Jim was out of the question, so he had no one else to ask.
Okay, if you're sure, I'll take on the role.
Thank you. I'm counting on you.
David and James shook hands, agreeing to the proposal. Jim was set to help with James' farm.
While I'm alive, I won't let you do anything wrong. I'll be strict.
James declared that enthusiastically, and Jim's face turned even paler beside him. Months later, David was successfully elected, and I took over his law office.
Doing well, Kevin.
Even now, David visits the office when he has time, and I'm truly grateful. To me, David is like a second father. I never thought our relationship would become so real. David, did you go on a date with Mom?
What are you grinning about? Is it bad to go out?
I teased David, who asked me back bashfully. Yes, recently David and my mom got married, having developed a relationship from mutual respect. No, it's great to see you so happy. I chuckled at David's newlywed happiness, radiating a joyful aura. Of course, I was happy for their happiness, and having David as my new father was an honor. It was easy to accept him because he had always been there for my mother and me. He has always been supporting us endlessly. He helped me through my mother during the times I was harassed in high school. And it was him who encouraged me and suggested taking the high school equivalency exam when I gave up on pursuing college. I am forever grateful to David. As for Jim, he's now struggling with a family farm business. With James, who retired as a city council member, keeping a strict watch on him, Jim apparently can't indulge in his previous habits of gambling and partying, not even managing to go out for drinks. I heard rumors that Jim's former classmates, who used to follow him around, don't even give him a second glance now. When I was set to meet everyone from high school at the reunion, I felt a sense of unease, recalling those times. But now, with Jim gone, all those who had followed him looked at me, now a lawyer, with respect.
I was just following Jim's orders back then. I really am sorry for what I did to you.
Kevin, I'm truly sorry. If it's okay with you, please give me your contact info. Let's meet up and have a drink sometime.
I accepted their apologies and ended the reunion on good terms. I've faced many hardships, but I'm glad for everything I've been through. I don't consider my truancy and inability to attend high school as a waste of time. The hurt I experienced back then has shaped me into someone who now wants to stand by and support those who are weak and wounded. This change in me is undoubtedly thanks to David. Now, I aspire to be a lawyer who can empathize with others, just like David.
You don't need to speak, okay? You're not hired. I just don't like people with only a high school degrees. You're basically screaming, I am incompetent, right?
I had to work right after high school due to my family circumstances. I understand it. It's truly regrettable. But I will withdraw from the interview. I was insulted by the interviewer at the job interview, and I was furious and decided to withdraw from the interview myself. However, the next day, I received a call on my cell phone from an unexpected person. Naturally, I was taken aback. The company I interviewed with yesterday has since fallen into a serious situation. My name is Michael Johnson. Since I was young, I want to be a painter, and I've been working hard every day. The reason why I want to be a painter, it's because my dad is a painter. My dad is an unsuccessful landscape painter. He can draw magnificent pictures with just a brush on a white canvas. As a child, I believed he was a real magician. However, the income of an unsuccessful painter wasn't enough to live on. Therefore, the main breadwinner in our family was my mom. Back then, it was still rare for women to work outside the home. I think it must have been very hard for her. But she never once spoke ill of my dad's job. On the contrary, they were so lovey-dovey couple that I was annoyed by their love for each other as a child. Probably, She also liked the paintings my dad drew. I remember her looking happy every time she came home from work and saw my dad heading for his canvas.
You know, I really love your dad's paintings.
She said so with a fulfilled look on her face. Seeing that made my heart full. I want to paint pictures that make people smile. It was probably inevitable that I aspired to be a painter. When I started high school, I joined the art club without any hesitation. The club was an environment for me to improve my skills with my classmates and seniors. It was so enjoyable. I painted whenever I had free time. Apparently, I had something called talent. My art club teacher suggested me early on that I should consider going to an art school. But thinking about the tuition, I knew I couldn't afford art school. Yet, having someone appreciate my efforts and talent was gratifying. The teacher must have had a hunch about my family's situation, knowing that art school wasn't a realistic option for me. But still, the teacher always encouraged me to try for art-related awards whenever possible.
Even if it's difficult to go to art school, having some achievements will surely be helpful in the future.
I was a bit doubtful about what the teacher said, but I kept on painting anyway. At first, my paintings didn't win any awards. But as I continued to paint under my teacher's advice, my desired subjects and techniques gradually became clearer. Yes, I was definitely leveling up. I kept painting tirelessly. A major breakthrough happened when I was in second grade of high school. I won a prestigious Newcomers Award. It was a well-known award, and many of its recipients had gone on to become famous. And winning it as a high school student was quite rare, happening only once every few decades. Genius painter emerges. That was the headline in a magazine article about me. But the happiest about it were not me, but my parents.
My painting is similar, yet so different from yours.
It feels like you, Michael, and above all, it's incredibly beautiful.
Watching my parents smile like that, I was feeling happiness for the first time in my life. Then, shortly after winning the Newcomers Award, I gathered the courage to share my future dreams with my parents. I want to become a painter like Dad and make someone smile. At first, they were surprised, but then they gave me their biggest smiles.
Michael can do it. After all, you're the child of a painter.
Yay. However, Dad gave me some advice with a slightly serious face.
But you know, being a painter doesn't always pay well. If there's another path you can take, I think that might be better.
Hearing this, my mom started to argue. Oh, come on.
You know, seeing your paintings is one of the greatest pleasures of my life.
Well, that's...
I watched their heartwarming exchange, truly glad to be their child. But happy times come to an end. During my senior year of high school, my mom suffered a stroke due to overwork and collapsed. Fortunately, she was out of immediate danger, but had to be hospitalized for a long time in her critical condition. We lost our major breadwinner. We rushed to find a job. I got a part-time job, and Dad found full-time employment. We got jobs, but the work was so hard that it was impossible for me to find time to paint. At home, Dad and I were so exhausted, all we could do was sleep. Our ability to immerse ourselves in painting in this house was all thanks to Mom's support. We were painfully reminded of this. We also realized just how significant Mom's always smiling presence was, no matter how tired she was. We visited her in the hospital every day, expressing our love and gratitude. Then, one day, my cell phone suddenly rang. The screen showed numerous missed calls from Dad. Not just one or two. I had a bad feeling. The message said, "Mom's condition has worsened. Come to the hospital immediately." I rushed to the hospital with pale face. I kept praying for my mom's life on the way. "It'll be okay. Mom will definitely be okay." However, the scene that greeted me when I opened the hospital door, all I could see there was my crying dad and my cold mom.
"She passed away about 30 minutes ago."
The nurse explained to me as I stood there in a deep shock. Approaching the bed, I saw Mom lying there with her usual peaceful expression. "Is she just sleeping?" I asked the nurse repeatedly, but all they did was shake their heads silently. The rest of the memories are honestly a blur. Mom's funeral, various procedures, everything felt surreal. After everything was over, in the now quiet house, Dad started stuffing his painting supplies into trash bags. "Dad, what are you doing?" I was shocked, but Dad didn't respond. "Dad, please, Dad." Dad only noticed me after I called out to him several times. It seems that finally, my dad noticed I was there.
"It's my fault. Because I kept painting."
Dad, holding a bag full of supplies, started crying.
"I didn't work enough. It's because of me. I killed Mom."
My dad just kept crying. I had no idea what to say to him. He was almost a broken man, consumed by guilt. In such a situation, I couldn't possibly say, "I want to study art at art school." Our family finances were already tight, with practically no savings. So, inevitably, as soon as I graduated from high school, I had to start working. But giving up on further education didn't guarantee finding a job. It was the summer of my senior year at high school. Having focused solely on painting all this time, I didn't even know what I needed to apply for a regular job. As expected, a flood of rejection letters came pouring in. I was sick of opening them. Then, one day, as usual, I opened a rejection email and was astonished. No way. I had received 2 acceptance letters for the application screening from the famous art companies that I had secretly wanted to join, and not from just one, but 2 companies. Both were looking for college graduates or art school graduates. So, a high school graduate like me shouldn't even have been eligible. But I applied for the job with no luck. Along with my resume, I had sent a few old paintings as part of a portfolio, which might have worked in my favor. And the interview day, by chance, was the same for both companies. There was a possibility of getting job offers from both. Thinking about it made my heart start to race. "Watch me, Mom." I spoke to my mom in heaven. I was definitely going to take this chance. On the day of the interview, Amid overwhelming nervousness, I waited for my turn.
Please come in.
When my name was called, I hurriedly stood up, knocked on the door as I had practiced, and entered into the room. 3 interviewers were in the room, all staring at me intently. I am. Just as I was about to introduce myself, something unexpected happened.
You don't need to speak, okay? You're not hired.
One of the interviewers cut me off.
Sorry to bring you here for nothing, but you're not what we're looking for.
Naturally, I was taken aback, staring at the interviewer. The interviewer, smirking, continued to look at me.
Well, you see, you're just a high school grad, right? We only hire art grads.
Although he said so, it was something I couldn't just accept. You're the ones who called me for the job interview. Sensing my anger, the interviewer continued with a look of disdain.
Well, HR probably thought it'd be good to show some high school kid the harshness of the real world by inviting them to an interview.
The interviewer seemed pleased with my speechlessness, continuing gleefully. The other interviewers tried to stop him, saying that he was saying too much, but he continued to talk as if he was in a higher position than the others.
To be honest, I dislike high school grads. Talking to them feels like I'm getting dumber. People who can even get into college are hopeless, right? They're just living their lives advertising to everyone that they're incompetent. Don't you feel embarrassed?
The interviewer, with a crude smile on his face, made a gesture with his hand toward me as if he shooed away a stray dog. This man, with utter contempt for me, it filled me with intense anger. Hey fool, you can't get into college. Don't mess with me. Does he have any idea why I had to give up further education? I would have gone if I could. But there are people in this world who can't go on to higher education for many different reasons. It was clear my interview was over, but I couldn't leave without saying something. I was almost losing my mind with anger. I understand it. It's a great pity, but I will have to withdraw from the interview. At that moment, the interviewer smiled gleefully, but I continued regardless. I have no interest in working for a company that only values people based on their highest level of education. Having said that, I grabbed my bag, greeted him at the door, and left. As I walked out into the hallway, the other job seekers were staring at me. Probably, they had heard everything from my interview. Feeling awkward under their gazes, I looked down and hurried away. On the way home, I found myself crying tears of frustration. Damn it. I tried to act tough, but the shock was real. I can't let this get to me. I need to switch gears. I muttered, desperately wiping away my tears. I still had one more interview today. I couldn't show up with a face swollen from crying. I had to secure a job offer, no matter what, to support my dad, who had become almost like a zombie. All right. I psyched myself up and somehow managed to refocus, rechecking the materials for the next company. I couldn't afford to lose. The next day, I was awakened by the ringtone of my cell phone. Too many things happened yesterday. After the second interview, I had fallen asleep like I was going to pass out. I have to answer this call. Thinking that, I quickly grabbed my phone. It was a call from the company I had withdrawn from yesterday. Do they want to say something? I'm already rejected. Just leave me alone. Reluctantly, I pressed the call button.
Is this Johnson? We would like to apologize about yesterday's interview.
I was confused. The person who made the call was the company's president, and that is personally apologizing to one student who is job hunting. What the hell is going on? The president explained what had happened. Apparently, one of the job seekers in the hallway had recorded the entire my interview and posted it on social media. The interviewer mocked high school graduates excessively and said, "You're hopeless, no matter what you do, in the end," which is currently causing a lot of trouble on social networking sites. After the call, I hurriedly searched online and found that the news was everywhere. There were also voices questioning why my name was mentioned in the video.
Isn't this the kid who was recently a sensation in the art world?
So, this company not only failed to recognize the talent of a genius painter, but also disparaged him just for his educational background. There are high school grads among their clients, right? What's with this attitude?
That blow-up never stops. In fact, some clients were considering terminating their contracts with the company. Suddenly, my doorbell rang. Several men in suits were standing outside. The interviewer from yesterday was among them.
We are terribly sorry.
When I stepped out onto the porch, all the men apologized deeply to me. It was a very formal apology, their expressions full of sincere regret. Given that they were on the verge of losing all their business deals, their response seemed almost expected. The interviewer looked like he had been severely reprimanded by the executives. His face gaunt and trembling.
If Johnson has no objections, we would very much like to offer you a position at our company.
The interviewer then continued in a trembling voice, "Of course, no need for another interview." But I shook my head. "I'm sorry, but I've already secured a job offer elsewhere." My response seemed to completely catch them off guard. Then I simply said, "Excuse me," to the men in confusion and closed the front door. That day, despite being in tatters, I had also visited a reputable event planning company known for its skilled staff. This company handles a lot of art-related matters. People with a strong interest in art, extensive knowledge, or the actual ability to paint are highly valued. After seeing such comments, I decided to apply. When I arrived at the office and announced that I was there for the interview, I was directed to the waiting room. The walls there were adorned with paintings by artists I admired. Working here would surely be a joy every day. Just as I muttered that, a man appeared from the back. As soon as he approached me, he immediately asked for a handshake, which I accepted. Then, he showed a genuinely happy smile. He seemed to be overwhelmed with happiness, one that reminded me of how my mom looked when she saw my dad's paintings.
Nice to meet you. I'm Anderson, the president here. Today's meeting, rather than an interview, I was hoping to scout you.
What?
Actually, I'm a big fan of yours, Johnson.
I was confused. but Anderson held out a magazine clipping to me. There it was, the painting I had created in my sophomore year. Oh, this! I was at a loss for words. It was the painting that won me the Newcomers Award. This painting was created when my mom was still alive, and all I could think about was the joy of painting.
I really love this painting, especially the use of colors. It's like magic, isn't it? I always wanted to meet the artist. So, you can imagine my surprise when your portfolio arrived.
According to Anderson, the portfolio I sent was excellent, and with a little polishing, I could be an immediate asset. The conversation smoothly, almost effortlessly, shifted to employment terms.
We may not be able to promise salaries and benefits like big companies, but we can assure an environment that respects your talent and direction to the fullest. Of course, we'll support your painting activities as much as possible.
From his tone, it was clear Anderson highly valued me. But what moved me most was his reference to magic-like paintings. This is exactly how I felt looking at my dad's paintings as a child. Please let me work here. I immediately decided and made my request. Of course, the first company knew nothing about this. Had they known, they wouldn't have come asking me to work for them the next day. The first company later revealed the inside story of pressure interviews and academic discrimination. As a result, they gained a bad reputation as a black company, leading most of their job offer recipients to decline, and several competent employees resigned. They were about to go public, but the incident with me caused their reputation to plummet, forcing the cancellation of their IPO. Including the loss of business partners, the damage was in the tens of millions of dollars. The interviewer who handled my interview was forced to resign as a disciplinary action. If only they hadn't discriminated based on educational background, it wouldn't have caused such a big problem. But it was too late for regrets. A year has passed. Now, I'm gaining experience not just as a painter, but also as a staff member at an event planning company. I'm currently involved in a major project, an exhibition for a certain artist. Of course, that artist is my dad. The paintings are being delivered over here.
Right, thanks.
Sometime after starting this company, I somewhat forcefully showed Anderson my dad's paintings. I was sure he would like them, if he liked mine. My intuition was right on target, and Anderson was extremely impressed. Anderson, who had become a fan of my dad's painting, declared, "I will produce this amazing artist." Thus, a large-scale solo exhibition was planned in a prime city location. Initially, my dad was hesitant to pick up the brush again, but after much persuasion from me and the president, he changed his mind. The final push came from my words. Mom was the main breadwinner because she loved Dad's paintings. Finally reconciled, my dad is now overwhelmed with interviews and painting requests. My dad, who once became a hopeless artist, is now creating new works of art. Continuously creating new works fills me with joy. And then the opening day arrived. Standing beside my dad, I looked at the paintings he had made during the time Mom was alive. He didn't say anything, but he was probably thinking about many things. So I just stood there silently beside him. Then it happened.
You both really did well.
I felt as if I heard that voice from somewhere. Did you hear it?
Jer, Mom came to see us.
My dad was smiling. It was the same happy smile as when my mom was with us. We were finally moving forward.
It seems we just don't mesh well. You don't have to come in from tomorrow.
I had reached my limit. I couldn't follow such a boss any longer. I responded on the spot. Understood. I will resign effective today. Thank you for the brief time I've been here. At that moment, it was decided that I would leave the job I loved. While I was getting used to the fast-paced days, a newly hired clerk came to tell me there was a visitor. Wonder what it is? I thought as I headed to the reception room, where I found Samantha waiting.
John, please, won't you come back to our company?
Upon seeing me, Samantha immediately prostrated herself on the floor. The once domineering Samantha who was harsh on employees was nowhere to be seen. My name is John Baker. I've been working at a boutique couture shop in a small town for 20 years. Though it's called a couture shop, there have been fewer customers looking for couture lately. So we also handle suits, shirts, and even school uniforms, which has allowed us to keep going till today. Far from being dissatisfied with this company, I am fond of it for its community ties and values. However, the dark clouds over the company began when the president, who had been managing it, fell ill. The boutique was established by the president in his younger years, but he had been unwell lately. Eventually, he could no longer appear at the shop front, and his successor was his granddaughter, Samantha Smith, who had no prior experience in this field. The transition was made, but regardless of her work performance, her way of dealing with people was just terrible. I was particularly targeted by the new president, Samantha.
John, how's sales lately? I'd like you to secure some new contracts soon.
She asked me, clearly in a bad mood. Yes, I've been making rounds, but it's hard to find individuals interested in ordering couture. It might sound like an excuse, but it's true that interest in couture has been waning over the years. The reality that our couture shop model is dwindling is also true. However, Samantha scolded me relentlessly.
I don't want to hear excuses. It's not that contracts can't be secured. You just haven't done enough until you get them. It's not enough to just visit our regulars. I need you to find new clients.
Saying this, Samantha let out an exaggerated sigh.
Don't think you can stay here forever. Increase your time outside. Don't come back until you've secured a contract.
Samantha stood up, grabbing her bag. It was a designer bag and a well-tailored suit. Because the president represents the company, Samantha, who spent her working hours at spas and saunas, began to lose the employees' respect. Are you taking a break, Ms. President? We'll have to be ready by 3 p.m. for a meeting about the uniforms we supply. Before I could finish, Samantha slammed her bag onto the desk with a loud noise.
Excuse me, a break. Understand this, a president doesn't have breaks. It's troublesome to be lumped together with your regular employees. You never know where a good opportunity might pop up, and it's essential to show your face around. Think before you speak, will you?
With that, Samantha turned swiftly and headed for the exit. Her large diamond necklace shone brightly, almost blindingly. Right as lunch break started, I hurried through my meal. Ever since the previous president fell, the luxury of a leisurely meal had disappeared. Since Samantha took over, there's been an increased focus on performance and contract numbers, with no tolerance for maintaining the status quo or regression. There have been days, she has said, if you have time to take a lunch break, you should be out selling. Gone are the days of casual small talk and ordering takeout together. Now, none of that happens. It was a precious time for employee communication, but thinking those days are gone makes me incredibly sad. However, there's no time to wallow in sentimentality. Today, besides visiting our valued clients, I need to secure a new contract. If I skip the greetings for businesses and individuals whose orders are already confirmed, I could make more sales visits. But having been in this job for many years, I deeply believe that personal relationships are what matter most. It's enjoyable to work on and choose important couture pieces with a trusted tailor who understands you, and customers feel reassured by established relationships. That's why they buy expensive couture and choose us for their parties and wedding couture. Though I can't take my time, I make sure to greet our suppliers and valued clients carefully. At one elderly customer's home, I asked how their grandchild's wedding went. This grandmother had chosen and purchased her granddaughter's wedding couture with me. Hearing wonderful stories about the wedding and how satisfied they were with the couture made me really happy. When she said, "Please take care of my other granddaughter's wedding," I was truly delighted. As this goes, there's hardly any time left for visiting potential new clients, so naturally, I haven't secured any new contracts. The clock had just struck 2. I had to head back soon to make it in time for a meeting, so I started back to the office with heavy steps.
Welcome back. How did it go? You didn't slack off, so you must have snagged at least one contract, right?
Samantha's words made me mumble in response. Samantha, who had returned early for once, was here, and her presence was almost enough to drive me insane. Seemingly displeased with my reaction, Samantha kicked the desk and raised her voice.
Don't tell me you've got no results. Really, you're just dead weight to the company. Maybe you should start job hunting. Though, there's nothing less needed than an unskilled person in their 40s.
Irritated by Samantha's words, I reported the little progress I had made. However, a client who previously purchased couture for a wedding was pleased and said they'd request our services again. Hearing my story, Samantha snorted.
And when will they buy? How many pieces? What's the unit price? Is this going to be a continuous deal?
Accusingly questioning me, Samantha continued her criticism in a cold voice.
Listen, you seem to think socializing is sales. Sales isn't over until the product is delivered and the invoice is sent. It doesn't profit us to take your casual conversations seriously and brag about them.
While I felt like arguing back against Samantha's point, it's true I hadn't secured any new contracts. Determined to land a contract tomorrow to prove her wrong, I started preparing for the upcoming meeting. But while I was stapling documents for everyone, Samantha suddenly said something unexpected.
Right, I have to leave for an appointment now, so let's postpone the meeting report till tomorrow.
As Samantha began to get ready, I couldn't help but ask, "Wait a minute. I was told we had a meeting today. If we don't confirm and proceed with the orders today, We won't make it in time. It's essential for the president to be there. Do you really have an unavoidable appointment? Samantha made an obviously annoyed face.
It's an important dinner. I don't have time to spend on you, so I'm leaving now.
With that, she briskly headed towards the exit. Samantha, reaching for the door, turned to me before leaving.
Don't think your work ends after the meeting. Once you've placed the orders, go out and bring back at least one contract. Of course, there's no overtime pay, so do your best.
Samantha laughed heartily and left with a spring in her step. The person who came for the meeting was puzzled, thinking the president would be present, but I managed to get their understanding. In a small-scale company like ours, trust is everything. The previous president always stressed this to the employees and practiced it himself. He would always show up for sales and meetings, and after delivery, he provided meticulous service. This built the trust from the community that has supported us thus far. But lately, I've felt that trust in our company is waning. By sincerely handling the situation and securing orders as usual, I was able to gain understanding. After sending off our business partners, I immediately started preparing for more sales visits. I'm heading out for a bit, so you all can leave when it's convenient. Thanks for today. It was already completely dark, and work hours had long since ended. I greeted a few employees and headed out for sales. The next day, I arrived at work more spirited than ever. Yesterday, during my cold calls, I happened to speak with someone interested in renewing their company's uniforms. It wasn't a large company, but conversations progressed smoothly, and we were able to agree on a contract right then. For now, it's just summer clothes and winter sweaters. And since we're not dealing with large corporations, the profit won't be substantial. However, if they liked our service, it could lead to renewing their winter attire and possibly referrals to other businesses. I know well how such connections can lead to further opportunities. I felt light both in heart and step, thinking I could make a good report to Samantha. But my hopes were quickly dashed. Samantha, who arrived at work a bit late, called me in right away.
John, don't we have a report from yesterday's meeting? And I'd like to hear about what happened afterward.
Yes, I'll report now. I walked over to Samantha with a spring in my step, but she was rubbing her temples, looking wary. Are you okay? Are you feeling unwell, Miss President? Just get on with it, was all she said. There was a smell of alcohol. Apparently, she had been drinking until early morning and wasn't feeling well. Coming to work smelling of alcohol and looking so lethargic. What kind of president is that? Despite my astonishment at Samantha, I succinctly shared the events of yesterday. We proceeded with the order as usual for this year. There was some negotiation on price, but they understood that it wouldn't change moving forward. And then…
Hold on, they asked for a discount. You pushed back, wanting to raise the prices, right?
Samantha glared at me with bloodshot eyes. No, of course, we'd like to raise prices given inflation. But since we're distributing the same products as other companies, that's difficult. Considering their profit margins, they wouldn't agree to that. Samantha became infuriated at my explanation.
That's why they are walking all over us. Without a strong stance like then we won't take it. What will you do? It's not about their profits. You need to prioritize our profits first.
Even though she's the president, I couldn't agree with Samantha's point of view. Sure, tough negotiations and pushing back are sometimes necessary. But business can't last if it's all about one party taking all the profit. Especially in dealings between companies, that's even more the case. Arguing would only add fuel to the fire. I continued my report from yesterday. We'll consider the pricing moving forward. Also, we secured a new contract. My report seemed to spark a slight interest in Samantha.
Not bad. How much profit will it bring?
We've taken an order for summer clothing and winter sweaters for a company of a few dozen employees. It's not a huge scale, but it's a start for future opportunities. However, Samantha looked disappointed at my explanation.
That's it. And it's not even couture. Really, you're useless.
After all the running around outside of work hours, this was her response. I had reached my breaking point. Excuse me, but you don't understand anything about this job. It's these connections that get us work. Your focus on immediate profit is wrong. For the first time, I stood up to my boss. Samantha seemed taken aback by my reaction, but quickly reverted to her usual haughty demeanor.
Understood. It seems we just don't mesh well. You don't have to come in from tomorrow.
I had reached my limit. I couldn't follow such a boss any longer. I responded on the spot. Understood. I will resign effective today. Thank you for the brief time I've been here. At that moment, it was decided that I would leave the job I loved. What's going to happen now? Alone in the empty room, I worried about my future. Though I had left in a hurry, I had nowhere to go. Even though I enjoyed my work, my salary was never high, so I didn't have much in savings. Even if I lived frugally to the extreme, it was clear my money would run out quickly. One day, a familiar name popped up on my smartphone. Tom Wilson. Tom and I went to the same college, and for the first few years after graduation, we kept in touch and went out for drinks. But it had been years since we'd interacted outside of exchanging greeting cards. The call from an old friend made me overjoyed. Long time no see. How have you been?
Really, it's been a while. I'm good. You sound well too, John.
I was excited, but Tom's next words dampened my spirits.
How's work? Knowing you, John, I'd guess you're a capable boss with many subordinates.
That's tough to say, but I've been unemployed for a while. Tom was always upbeat, but even he seemed at a loss for words.
It must have been tough. Let's not talk over the phone. How about we go out for drinks? It's sudden, but how about today?
I eagerly accepted Tom's invitation. Just the thought of seeing Tom made me happy, and I felt like I needed someone to talk to. We decided on a place and time, and agreed to meet at a pub we used to frequent.
I was shocked. You clashing with the president and storming out of the company. You used to hate conflicts, always apologizing even when the other party was at fault.
I was surprised too, but I just couldn't get along with the new president. Not understanding the field work is one thing, but not considering clients or partners at all. Tom listened to my complaints, nodding all the while. Even after years without seeing each other, I was grateful to have a friend with whom I could speak so openly.
Did you always work in sales at that company?
Sales was the main part, but I also worked on the company's website and tried developing new products. It was fun, but we never really got anywhere due to budget constraints. While showing Tom the company's website on my smartphone, I explained that I had made it myself. Tom was amazed.
Did you really make this? I thought it was done by an amateur, but it's as good as if we had outsourced it.
The previous president wanted a website that would attract young people, so I studied hard. Couture is beautiful, but the industry is dwindling. I had to think differently, but there's only so much we can do with our size. Tom leaned in as I talked.
What were you thinking of? Tell me anything.
Overwhelmed by Tom's enthusiasm, I shared my thoughts and what I hadn't been able to execute. The demand for everyday couture is decreasing, but the need for dressing up on special days or for social media is definitely increasing. Plus, considering inbound demand, focusing on special days rather than everyday use is the way to go. I passionately explained my vision to Tom. Besides, I wanted to create other products, not just couture, delivering high-brand leather goods at a slightly lower price. Consumers would appreciate affordable quality products, and the profit margin would be high. We can't survive on thin margins alone. Tom listened intently, crossing his arms and pondering.
Was it because of the initial investment? Or did you not proceed because you had no funds?
That, and the current president harshly criticized the idea. She said a couture shop shouldn't bother with extras. I understood the president's point of view. I too wanted to preserve the old couture shop that the predecessor cherished without changing it. But it's impossible to resist the tide of time in a declining industry. I had hoped to bring new ideas to the company, but they were not welcomed. Tom finished his beer in one gulp, then turned to me.
John, how about working for my company? I'll pay you a fixed salary equal to what you were making, plus commission on sales. Not a bad deal, right?
Tom's eyes were serious. I knew Tom had started his own brand and was managing it as a sole proprietor, but I hadn't expected he could afford to hire someone like me. When I tried to confirm what he had said, Tom laughed and said,
You underestimate me. True, my main business is online, and I don't have a physical store, but that's enough nowadays. It's about time I expanded. I can't keep up with just outsourcing.
Then Tom whispered to me the turnover of his store and how much he earned in a month so that others couldn't hear. Hearing the amount, my eyes widened in shock. He was making in a month what I earned in a year.
So, I'm looking forward to it. I'll be counting on you from next week.
We agreed to formalize the contract later, but it was decided that I would be hired at Tom's company. At Tom's company, I immediately made an impact. Revamping the previously hard-to-navigate and inconvenient product search website, the page views skyrocketed by more than tenfold. Additionally, I introduced suits and leather accessories to Tom's company, which had mainly been selling t-shirts. The usability and quality were well received, and word of mouth led to sales that soon overshadowed the t-shirts.
Hey, the orders won't stop, and production can't keep up. Can you do something about it?
Offering good products at low prices, plus the brand reliability Tom has built up over time. I'm really happy to be able to do what I couldn't before due to budget constraints. Even as we spoke, purchase notifications kept popping up on the tablet. Production was nearly at its limit, and Tom seemed happy but scratching his head.
Your old company let go of a real talent.
It was just good timing and the right environment. Anyone could have done what I did. Suddenly, my smartphone rang. Looking at the display, Samantha's name appeared. Wondering what she wanted, I nervously answered the phone. Hello.
John, something terrible has happened. Can you come back? Actually, I need you to come back right now. Is that okay?
Samantha sounded more flustered than ever, so I decided to listen. What's wrong?
Our couture customers say they'll go elsewhere if you're not here. Other partners are also asking for you, and the company website is having continuous issues without updates. Can you come back soon and help?
Even though I was no longer with the company, I responded politely. I see. I don't think it's appropriate for me to deal directly with clients, so I'll pass. But I can fix the website and system issues on my next day off. I didn't hand that part over, so that's my bad. I thought I was being reasonable, but Samantha seemed unsatisfied.
What are you talking about? Just come back. After all the company has done for you, what are you doing wandering around?
I was terminated from your company. Are you offering to rehire me? I could hear a sigh of frustration from the other end.
Don't act so smug. You must be struggling to make ends meet, right? I can pay you the same salary as before, so don't worry about that.
Tom burst out laughing, hearing Samantha's words. He gestured as if to say, "Tell her off." Do you know my salary now? I probably make in a month what you earn in a year. My salary would likely surpass the annual revenue of my former company in just a few months. Though I had fond memories of my old workplace, I was fulfilled in my current job and certainly didn't want to return to work under such a boss. After bidding Samantha goodbye, I hung up. Tom's company grew busier with just me joining, leading to partnerships with outsourced companies and recruiting new talents, rapidly expanding at scale. Seeing products I developed being appreciated and posted on the social media, I felt truly glad to have joined this company. As I navigated through my bustling days, a newly hired clerk came to inform me of a visitor. Curious, I headed to the reception room, where I found Samantha.
John, I'm begging you, please come back to our company.
Upon seeing me, Samantha pleaded so desperately it was almost pitiable. The once domineering Samantha, who used to lash out at employees, was nowhere to be seen. What happened? Let's hear it first. I managed to get Samantha to sit on the sofa. She looked so worn out, it was hard to remember her once lively face.
Since then, we've been losing customers non-stop, not just individual clients, but corporate partnerships as well. I can't even pay the employees' salaries. If things continue like this, we'll have to close the shop. I need your help.
While I felt sorry for Samantha, she had brought this upon herself. Neglecting communication with people and solely pursuing the company's profits, it was inevitable that partners would turn their backs. I'd like to help, but I'm swamped with work at my current company. I'm sorry, but I can't assist you. Samantha, in a last-ditch effort, begged me for help, almost as if clutching at straws. Samantha, pull yourself together. Have you done everything you can? Now is the time to hit the ground running. To regain trust, you need to meet face to face, understand their needs, and empathize with their concerns. Please take the time to do what you've neglected until now meticulously. Doing just that will surely make a difference. We can talk after that. Samantha wiped her tears and nodded firmly.
I was wrong. I'll start doing it from now on.
With that, Samantha stood up. It was good if she realized even a little about what's important in business. However, keeping a company going isn't that easy. Though I said that honestly, starting from scratch now seemed nearly impossible. I remembered the face of the predecessor I owed so much to. I wanted to do something to prevent the company I loved from going bankrupt. But I'm swamped with the business I'm currently handling, and can't think of anything I could do. I bit my lip, feeling the weight of my powerlessness. Several years have passed since I joined Tom's company. As our company grew, so did the number of companies we dealt with.
John, what do you think of this? I believe it would be perfect for an important dinner date.
I was impressed by Samantha's proposal. Yay. It's exactly as I envisioned. The fabric is lovely too. The response was good when we announced it on the social media. So let's place an order for $50,000 worth with your company for now.
Thank you so much.
Since then, the performance of Tom's company has skyrocketed, and we've had to establish new departments and hire more staff. I contributed to producing hit products, especially in the suit department. We developed new suits incorporating couture designs and fabrics as accents, which were well received not just by American but also by foreigners, rapidly expanding our market. The challenge was securing a steady supply of quality fabric and connecting with companies strong in couture, which led me to contact Samantha. Samantha not only sourced the fabric but also provided consumer-oriented suggestions, resulting in a better product than initially planned. I really appreciate having you, Samantha. Thank you. Samantha blushed at my thanks.
I learned what's important from you, John. I was such a pathetic person. Despite being a president, I was desperate to show my authority in an industry I knew nothing about, but that was a terrible mistake.
Now I hear she's built good relationships with her employees and partners, earning the community's trust. I'm convinced Samantha's company will continue to thrive. Tom, who had been all about work, found a significant partner. Today is his wedding day. I was as happy for Tom's marriage as if it were my own. Congratulations. You've never looked better.
Well, it's all thanks to the design of this suit. I hope I'm not outdone by it.
Laughing at that, we shared a moment of joy, brightening the mundane days and making a one-day-only special occasion even more memorable. Clothes have the power. I'm happy to work with such power. I want to continue creating work that adds a touch of beauty to someone's daily life.
Wearing my brand new suit, I was sweating heavily. Each word from the interviewer was utterly simple, yet being under such scrutiny made my mouth move as if it belonged to someone else.
Why didn't you think about going to college?
That's because, I wanted to spend that time on programming.
So you just wanted to do what you like, right?
The intellectual interviewer snorted and said that. I had no response. Just a sense of regret and humiliation came over me. I'm sorry. As I apologized quietly, the interviewer said with a look of disdain,
Incompetent people are not accepted. You may leave now, please.
I couldn't even submit the detailed documents of the software I had developed and brought with me, too scared of what had transpired. Incompetence remains incompetence after all. I hung my head, greeted the interviewer, and left the room. My job hunt was proving to be a tough journey. That's what I thought until that moment. My name is Michael Johnson, and I'm 21 years old. In middle school, I got hooked on programming after playing around with a computer belonging to my uncle.
If that's what Michael decides, then it's fine by us.
My parents adored me and didn't scold me when I told them I wouldn't be going to college after high school. I'm a baby in my parents' eyes. It doesn't matter how old I get. While it seemed like my friends were all going through rebellious phases and clashing with their parents, I could never bring myself to strongly oppose my kind parents. Perhaps as a reaction, whenever I felt discontent, I'd throw myself into programming with a passion. When I was in front of my computer, I'd become utterly absorbed. All my worries would vanish, and I'd be filled with hope and exhilaration. The fewer days I went to school, the more I dove into programming every day. That's how I started creating simple games and social networking sites. Whenever an idea came to me, I'd try to create it on the spot. I continued living like that for a while. Every time I received feedback from users on my projects, I felt validated in my efforts. I'm not sure what kind of job I'll end up in, but if I could continue doing this, it would be my dream come true. This is my calling. That day too, I woke up past noon, having skipped school. I turned on my computer even before putting on my glasses. As soon as it finished booting up, I sat up, still tousled from sleep, and peered at the screen. Then, I saw an email had arrived. The moment I saw the sender, my body tensed, and I broke out in a sweat. This can't be real, a prank or a mistake. My sleepiness vanished instantly, and I decided to go downstairs to the living room to calm down.
Good morning, Michael. Do you want for breakfast? I was thinking of preparing lunch in about 30 minutes.
My mom, nibbling on some crackers while reading the newspaper, and my dad, clipping his nails on the porch. Looking out the window, I saw a plane floating in the cloudless sky.
Hey, Michael, it's a nice day again today.
My dad, with his hair streaked with gray, turned around and smiled. I used to be told I looked like my mom, but lately, it seems I've started to resemble my dad. Mom, I'll pass on breakfast. Can I get a coffee? Mom smiled warmly and headed to the kitchen, humming a tune. Even as I waited for my coffee, I couldn't stop thinking about that email. I'm just going to the bathroom. Leave the coffee for me. I decided I had to check it again. Without waiting for my mom's response, I dashed up the stairs to my room. I hurried to my computer and read the email again carefully. It was indeed from a well-known Japanese IT company that I recognized. The email was written in more polite English than I'd use. Can't be real. They wanted to buy my site, which I released 2 years ago, dedicated to a nerd community. It's a social site dedicated to the nerd community. I had noticed an increase in foreign users recently, but was it becoming popular overseas too? The email mentioned they wanted to discuss directly. My mind was completely overwhelmed. Feeling dizzy, I decided to go back to the living room.
What's wrong, Michael? You look pale. Do you have a stomach ache?
It's not that. Something big has happened.
Something bad?
My mom, who had been reading the newspaper, looked at me worriedly. Actually, One Japanese company wants to buy my site.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
But it might be a scam.
You won't know unless you try.
That's right. Why don't you take a chance and contact them?
Despite my worries, my parents were surprisingly enthusiastic. That's the thing with people who hardly ever use computers. They don't understand. But encouraged by my parents' words, I decided to reply to the email. Later, when I was offered an unimaginable amount for the site and decided to sell, I was incredibly nervous. With that money, I bought the latest computer and all the essentials for programming. I also took my parents to a fancy restaurant and contributed to my dad's car purchase. It was the least I could do to show my appreciation to my parents, who tolerated my reclusive lifestyle. I was indebted to the Japanese company. However, life changed drastically in the fall. My dad passed away suddenly from a subarachnoid hemorrhage. Using my healthy dad so suddenly, my mom became deeply depressed. Of course, so did I.
Was that tough for you? So, does that mean you, Abbas, need to start exploring the outside world soon?
As a naive person, I talked to a friend I met on the internet who I didn't even know. Black Cat is the handle of the friend I connected with through a hobbyist online game. By the way, Abbas is my handle name. We mainly talk using chat, and from what I can tell, Black Cat is a man. Though I've never asked his age. He's probably older than me. Yo, it would be great if there's a company out there willing to hire me. Black Cat kindly encouraged me as I felt down.
You're trying things you've never done before. It's natural to struggle. Job hunting seems like a distant memory for me, but I'm always here to listen if you need me.
Online gaming reminded me that there are real people on the other side of the screen. His words warmed my heart, filled with nothing but anxiety about my suddenly changing circumstances. So, I received advice from Black Cat on how to write a resume, points to highlight about myself, and tips for the interview.
Well, it'd be great if Abbas had some standout achievements to brag about.
When prompted about achievements, I remembered the site I had sold to a Japanese company.
Why don't you bring some material that introduces the site?
Black Cat suggested this, advising me to keep the details vague to avoid revealing my identity. I see. If the company sees it, they might evaluate my skills. Following Black Cat's advice, I prepared the presentation materials. With my job search prep complete, I started attending interviews at several companies. Big corporations wouldn't even consider me without a college degree. So, I sent my resume to as many small companies as I could, but few were willing to interview a high school graduate with no formal experience. I hadn't attended a vocational school, and my programming skills were entirely self-taught. Plus, I was a recluse. If I were an employer, I wouldn't take a chance on someone with such high risks. Though I understood this, each rejection email made me feel more isolated from the world, as if a hole had opened up in my heart. I could live off the money from the site sale for a while, but I wanted to reassure my dispirited mom as soon as possible. My anxiety was growing. It was Black Cat who cheered me up during those anxious moments.
Our company is looking for programmers too. If things don't work out, come work with us.
I took it as a joke, but those words lifted my spirits. I didn't know where he lived or what his company was like. "I'll count on you then." Such casual exchanges helped me calm down a bit. Even after getting rejected by many companies, I never gave up, and I was at another interview today. The company I was interviewing with today offered website and e-commerce site management services to local businesses. I applied because their job listing stated, "No experience necessary, programmers wanted."
Huh. So you spent the time you could have been in college on programming.
The interviewer today was the same as always, looking down on me with a disdainful attitude. His name tag read James.
So you've just been doing what you like, huh? What if you encounter something you dislike at our company? Are you just going to quit?
I scrambled to think of a response to James' words. As you've pointed out, I lack work experience. However, I have a strong foundation in programming and a strong desire to utilize it. I've come to your company's interview with the determination not to quit easily. I looked James straight in the eye and answered. Did I manage to convey that well? I was mentally celebrating, but James, looking at my resume, said,
"But, you know, Michael, your track record is pretty bad. I can't find any compelling reasons to hire you."
But could you please take a look at this? I have experience creating my own website." Saying that, I tried to take out the presentation materials I'd prepared with Black Kit's advice from my bag. However, James chuckled at my actions.
"What are you talking about? A no experience, no hire like you is a definite rejection. Please go home."
Thrown by his words, I didn't know how to respond and ended up apologizing meekly. "I am sorry." James sneered at me and loudly said,
"If you're going to apologize, then don't bother coming to an interview. What a complete waste of time."
Being yelled at out of the blue made me shrink even more. Finally, James offered a thin smile and recited his standard farewell.
"Thank you for your time today. We will inform you of our decision in 2 to 3 days. Thank you."
After the interview, I couldn't bring myself to go straight home. I found myself aimlessly sitting in a park near the company until it gradually got dark. Again, it didn't go well again. Feeling my life was enveloped in darkness, I wondered if having gone to college would have given me more options for living, sparing me from such struggles. Of course, I knew it was futile to blame myself now. Feeling miserable about my pathetic self, I couldn't bear the thought of going home and facing my mom. I decided to at least send a message to Black Cat about the interview. He's probably going to be fed up with me by now. As tears threatened to spill, a pleasant aroma wafted into my nose. It was coming from a nearby pub. I wondered if it was normal for working people to stop by places like this after work. I wouldn't normally consider entering such a place, but I didn't want to be alone today. I wondered if it might lift my spirits and open the pub's door.
"Hello, how many people?"
The cheerful greeting made me timidly indicate I was alone. I was guided to a seat at the counter, where it was relatively empty since it was still early. After receiving the menu from the staff, I ordered a few dishes. The simple, comforting flavors seemed to soothe my weary soul. As I was enjoying my meal alone, a pair of men were led to the seats next to me.
2 guests, right this way to the counter seats.
I glanced at the man who sat next to me. There was James, the interviewer I had met earlier in the day.
Hey, are you?
It seemed he remembered me as he initiated the conversation.
Do you know each other?
The man accompanying James asked, looking at me. The man, with a shaved side hairstyle and glasses, appeared older than James.
Yes, he came to our company for an interview today.
So you're into programming too, huh?
Yes, I am. I responded, but recalling the day's events made me unintentionally curt. Undeterred, the glasses-wearing man continued to engage me.
Did you study at a vocational school?
Come on, Tom. That almost sounds like another interview. His interview is already over.
Oh, that's right. Sorry.
The man, referred to as Tom, apologized lightly. Well, I didn't pass anyway. I laughed self-deprecatingly.
Is that so, James?
When Tom asked, James smiled and said,
Well, yeah, I mean, he's a high school graduate with no work experience. Plus, he's self-taught in programming, and even mentioned making his own website.
Remembering the interview, I felt a tightness in my chest. However, upon hearing this, Tom unexpectedly said,
A website you created yourself? Can you tell me more about it?
Surprised by Tom's forwardness, I decided to show him the presentation materials I hadn't had the chance to present during the interview. Tom took it and looked over it with enthusiasm.
Is this the site you sold to a Japanese company?
James looked confused next to an excited Tom. The site I had sold was now a top-ranked, well-known site in Japan. It has grown from a nerd community site to a reputable social networking platform recognized in Japan. I couldn't hide my surprise at its success.
Anyone who has ever aspired to be a programmer would have heard of this story at least once, but I never imagined the person behind it would come to our company for an interview. What's your name?
Michael Johnson.
That's it, no doubt about it.
While Tom spoke excitedly, James looked visibly uncomfortable. Then Tom said to James,
You've rejected such a talented person. Just by looking at these materials, anyone could see what kind of person he is. What exactly are your criteria for interviews?
Oh no.
James went pale as Tom's intensity grew.
James, maybe you've been letting talented people slip through all this time. If that's the case, you're definitely getting fired.
Listening to their conversation, the company had consistently rejected applicants for programming positions despite advertising that no experience was necessary. Tom had been investigating why, suspecting James's intimidating interview tactics might be the cause. Indeed, making troubling statements and shouting insults could be considered a form of stress interview.
Your actions could tarnish the company's image. I'll be reporting this in tomorrow's executive meeting, so be prepared.
After Tom's intervention, James left the pub as if fleeing. Thanks to Tom, I was successfully hired. After completing a 3-month probation period, I would officially become a full-time employee. My self-taught programming skills were not in vain. However, as a newcomer both to the workforce and as a programmer, I am inexperienced. I'm grateful to my senior colleagues who are willing to teach me, and I aim to grow steadily in my role. As for James, he wasn't fired but was transferred to a different department. His domineering behavior had alienated his coworkers, so when Tom confronted him about the stress interviews, no one came to his defense. And then, something even more surprising happened.
Good evening, Abbas. Congratulations on a job.
Black Cat. Oh no, you're my boss. I never imagined we'd end up working together.
Come on, just talk to me like you always do.
I never guessed that Black Cat was actually Tom. It became clear as we talked at the pub, and this revelation was the most surprising of all. The decisive clue was the presentation materials I had made with Black Cat's advice. Tom was quite surprised when he saw them, as they were the ones we had discussed. I am glad that your offer to work with me if I could not find a job came true for me. When I replied that, in chat, Black Cat, rather, Tom responded,
Didn't I tell you, you would be fine?
I wonder how much this simple exchange has saved me. I typed my heartfelt thanks into the chat. Today, as I take my first steps as a working adult, I visited my dad's grave with my mom. In front of the grave, I reported to my dad that I had secured a job. I've been relying on you and Mom for so long. I'm sorry, but from now on, I'm going to do my best. As I murmured this, my mom, with tears in her eyes, hugged my shoulder.
Michael, whatever you decide, I'm sure your dad is supporting you from wherever he is. And so is your mom.
With the kindness of my parents in my heart, I resolved to repay them, even just a little, for all they've done for me.
I've been thinking about this for a while, but you're just not needed in this company. I couldn't say it when I first arrived because it was too soon, but it's obvious by looking at you. You're incompetent,
said the newly appointed department head, who had taken issue with my blonde hair from the start, eventually driving me to resignation. A year had passed since then, and one day I found myself wearing a suit and visiting the company for the first time in a long while. As I entered the lobby, I ran into the department head, who approached me with a mocking tone and said,
"What's the rush? Got an interview now."
As I responded, her face turned pale. My name is Tyler Johnson, a 25-year-old working at a company that develops some of the most popular video games in the country. It's been 5 years since I joined the company, but I've had virtually no personal interaction with my colleagues. I've always been bad at socializing. I've spent most of my time facing video games, with no friends other than a childhood buddy, Kevin, who lived nearby. My parents are often busy and rarely home. I didn't have many chances to talk with them, which made me quite reticent. I never really knew how to start or hold a conversation, so I naturally spoke less and less.
Was there anything new this week?
Not really. Just the usual.
Don't you feel lonely?
Looking back, the feeling of returning to a quiet house with my parents' absence and feeling suffocated, thinking something was missing, might have been loneliness. However, I didn't realize at the time that it was the loneliness I was feeling. The quiet house, warming up pre-made meals in the microwave, making instant noodles with boiling water, and the echo of my own sounds were normal for me. Though my classmates sometimes pitied me, I never felt particularly unhappy with my life. I didn't struggle financially, and despite the limited time we spent together, my parents deeply loved me. They were concerned about my lack of social interaction and asked Kevin to play with me. Kevin often invited me over to play video games together.
I've gotten quite good, but I still can't beat you. Tyler, do you have any tricks?
I've just been doing this a lot.
Someday I'll beat you. Just you wait.
Kevin's family was also kind to me, and their house was always lively and cheerful. He never pitied me, knowing that,
sure, you might not have everything and there might be some inconveniences, but with parents who care about you so much and being able to play your favorite games, you can't possibly be unhappy. You're not bothered by this life, so it's wrong for outsiders to pity you and make a fuss. Why should you listen to and be hurt by the words of someone without that decency?
when I was troubled by being pitied by classmates, his words were a strong rebuff. I once asked him why he kept playing with someone like me. He wasn't even fun to talk to.
Why? There's only one reason I play with you. Because I want to, and because I've decided I will beat you.
Accepting me for who I am, not much of a talker, and always smiling, playing video games with Kevin was the happiest time for me. I didn't fit in at school, and Kevin was my only real buddy. I haven't made any other gaming friends, and of course, I haven't fit in at this company either. Beyond my lack of communication skills, there's also the issue of my appearance. Since graduating high school, I have short, dyed blonde hair and a tattoo on my leg. My flashy appearance and unsociable demeanor kept people away, leaving my surroundings as quiet as ever. I got the tattoo right after graduating high school. It was a promise to myself to stay true to who I am, not ashamed but for Kevin, who taught me the importance of being myself. All my fond memories are associated with gaming. In games, I could be a hero, a village chief, or a racer, traveling through various worlds without leaving my home. I love gaming and have dreams I want to fulfill, so I've always believed this job is perfect for me. Even though I don't chat much, I could tell that my coworkers relied on me. They never pried too much into my personal life. It seemed like they could tell I wasn't the type to care about appearances, but they understood it was a topic I didn't want to delve into, so they were kind enough to not cross that line. Today, a new department head starts. She was head-hunted by the CEO himself, rumored to be a very capable woman. Everyone was buzzing with excitement, wondering what kind of projects she'd bring and what her work style would be like.
Nice to meet you. I'm Sarah. At my previous company, I worked on developing this game. Let's all work together to develop great games.
She introduced herself while pulling out the most popular game from a rival company. I was happy to work with someone who had developed a game I'd played and liked so much. She spoke clearly, her voice filled with confidence backed by her experience, and her straightforward personality, coupled with her beauty, quickly made her the most popular person in the office. She was direct with her words, which some found off-putting, but I didn't particularly mind. She criticized when necessary and praised when due, and although her manner could be harsh, her points were valid. However, my relationship with her gradually soured. She seemed to think my silence and focus on work didn't fit the office atmosphere and called me out on it.
Could you try to greet people more cheerfully in the morning?
It started with such gentle suggestions, but my appearance and minimal conversation, not lavishing her with praise, seemed to irritate her, and she began to look at me with disdain. When a writer wanted to feature our company, she even asked me to take the day off, saying I'd lower the company's image. Despite this, I continued to work hard and, instead of opposing her, simply didn't cater to her. One day, she called me in when she was in bad mood than usual, the worst I'd seen.
I've been thinking, but you're just not needed at this company. I couldn't say it when I first arrived, but it's clear from your appearance that you're incompetent. I'm sorry.
She indirectly pushed me towards resignation, snorting and looking at me with pity. It was a look I'd become all too familiar with. It reminded me of people who pitied me for having parents who were rarely home. I don't hate people. They've created many useful and interesting things like games and medicine, but I don't like talking to them. They make assumptions and impose their righteousness on others. Who decided blonde hair means incompetence? I thought I was sincere in my work. Can't they see that? Being judged as incompetent now overlapped with the feelings of being judged unhappy as a child, and it felt like something inside me was about to break. I couldn't help but longing for the presence of Kevin, who understood me. Suddenly, a promise from the past came back to me.
Let's make the best game in the US someday, promise.
That voice finally showed me where I stood. There's no need to be hurt by the words of those without decency. I don't need this person's recognition. I just need to fulfill my promise with him. I left the company without saying anything. A year had passed. I was in a suit and visiting the company for the first time in a while. Then, in the lobby, I ran into the department head, who approached me with a mocking tone.
What's the rush? Got an interview now.
I thought to myself how unchanged she was, with a mocking expression. I wonder what face she'll make when she finds out what's about to happen. It's good she hasn't changed. That makes it all the more satisfying to prove her wrong. I no longer understood why I was so hurt by her words, by not being accepted. It is impossible to try to understand everyone. I had learned that painfully as a child. Kevin was frail and hardly ever came to school. On the rare occasions he felt well enough to attend with me, there were always those who insensitively suggested he was just skipping school. I knew we would never understand them. How could they mock him for mustering the courage to come to school? Why couldn't they consider that people who can come to school every day have their reasons? Why do they insist on imposing their own lifestyles and values as the norm on others? Everyone grows up in different environments. There's no such thing as normal. Values can't be narrowed down to just one. Why do people forget that not everyone can conform to the crowd? As I grew older, I realized that human nature doesn't change easily. It's hard to understand everyone, so we have to find a compromise somewhere. I set some rules for myself. Not to let my efficiency drop even when dealing with people I dislike. to only interact with others through work and not to pry into anyone's personal matters for fun, and to dedicate everything to fulfilling the promise with Kevin by any means necessary. I came to see the CEO.
Did you come to grovel because you couldn't find a job even a year after resigning? You always looked incompetent. No wonder no one would hire you.
The department head, who clearly still disliked me, taunted me, determined to prove her wrong. I revealed something only the CEO and a few others knew, confident she would find out soon enough. I've bought this company. Then, showing her my smartphone, I explained, I developed this game, referring to the current #1 most downloaded and extremely popular game. She was speechless with surprise. I had the idea while I was still working here, but since I was told to leave. Her face went pale and she collapsed to her knees. I never intended to cling to the company, but I was determined never to give up on game development. I still hadn't fulfilled a promise to Kevin. Well, he's no longer with us. I continued calmly. From the day I decided to focus on what I could do for Kevin rather than mourning his absence, I never cried again. So, after consulting with the CEO, I ended up buying the company. You're aware of the company's dire financial situation, right? Indeed, after I left, the company struggled with game development and was continuously in the red. The CEO acknowledged the significant contributions I had made and offered me an apology. Though I could have ignored the situation, I felt indebted to the company for employing me for 5 years without prejudice against my appearance, and I also wanted to get back at the department head. She dragged me to the CEO's office.
Why would you let this man buy the company? Even if he has a talent for game development, with that appearance, how can he be a CEO?
The CEO, smiling and glancing at me for a moment, said,
Why do you think so? His luck might be unconventional for a businessman, but it represents his roots and determination.
Huh?
You know too little about him. Isn't it wrong to judge and speak ill of someone you don't know well?
The CEO then shared the story of me and Kevin with her. I finally understood why the CEO looked at me briefly. It was a sign of caution, knowing the topic was painful for me. Kevin had been sickly since childhood, spending much time in the hospital or at home playing games. Whenever I could, I'd play games, and there were few who could match my skills. Kevin was one of them, and I loved playing games with him. After school, I'd rush to his place to play games together. We became so good at most games that we eventually started developing our own.
The two of you seemed genuinely happy creating games and started to dream. Two individuals, not particularly good at socializing on their own, became the best team together. One was a frail child who didn't fit in well with others, and the other was a child who lacked family time and didn't know how to communicate. Both knew well how to play alone and understood the joys of solitude. Yet, that didn't mean they were never lonely. A child too weak to even dream, and another afraid of getting hurt by seeking more than the status quo, could dream together. As adults, we promised to create the best game in the US, and all of us adults believed without a doubt that these two could achieve it. However, fate can be cruel, and Kevin worsened and passed away in high school. Johnson was so devastated, it was unbearable to watch. He stopped eating and his health declined as he blamed himself for not noticing sooner. Despite wanting to do something for him, we lost touch for a few years, but then he suddenly appeared for a job interview, looking just as he did before. His hair dyed the same golden color as Kevin, and a tattoo on his leg with the face of a man resembling Kevin. And then Johnson said, "I will create the best game in the US." Continuing Kevin's will, having his image tattooed on me is almost the same as fulfilling our dream together. He always remembered Kevin and their promise through his appearance. By the way, Kevin was my son.
The CEO, looking distant, whispered this last part.
No wonder you spoke, as if you'd been watching over me all this time.
Regret was evident in the CEO's voice. Even when Kevin died, the CEO lamented, "If only I had paid more attention. If only I had spent more time with him. If only I had noticed the signs sooner." We all bear guilt and regret when we lose someone important. But Kevin taught me that our time together wasn't wasted. Knowing his end was near, he left me a letter.
Don't blame yourself or waste away after I'm gone. I'm not going to ask you to live for both of us, but please live out your full life happily. You once asked why I enjoyed playing with you. You were my salvation. Even though I couldn't go outside, I was able to travel the world and become a racer and an athlete through games. I never beat you. But the world of gaming was my salvation, and playing with you was always fun. You never pitied me for being sickly, and never forced me outside. Told me you were a hero, and gaming was my world. Your games will surely be someone else's salvation. So don't give up on your dreams. I love seeing you happy, and don't want you to be sad forever. Looking forward. I never considered my life unhappy or regretted meeting you. Don't turn our meeting into something sad.
When I received the letter from Kevin's mother, I broke down. Yet, life goes on. I couldn't remain in sorrow forever. Time is precious, and every second counts towards making America's #1 game. With Kevin's words in my heart, I decided to move forward. She seemed at a loss for words, standing there dumbfounded. The next day, upon coming to work, she started to acknowledge her mistakes to me and the CEO, beginning to share her past.
I was thinking all the way home yesterday about a subordinate I lost at my previous job. They really looked up to me, and I thought of them as very dear to me. They were serious and quiet subordinates. I thought I was caring for them in my own way, but one day, they suddenly ended their own life. A quiet person like them wasn't someone who could easily share their work troubles. That's why I should have paid even more attention to them. I was tormented by my own helplessness for not being able to notice. They had told me the day before that they wanted to talk, but I couldn't make time for them. Being blamed by others for not noticing the signs, I started to feel more and more responsible and couldn't fit in with the atmosphere at work anymore. I became so disengaged that the current company's CEO approached me. At first, I declined, but I was drawn to the words that I was needed and decided to change jobs. I was looking for a place where I could be accepted. That's when I met Johnson. He dressed inappropriately for a professional, seemed to avoid actively engaging with people, and appeared to be just getting by. Though the quiet and diligent subordinate was no longer there, Johnson was still working unaffectedly, and I found myself unfairly harsh towards him, out of frustration. I am truly sorry. It was just misdirected anger. I was venting my frustration on a complete stranger. I had completely forgotten that everyone has their own circumstances and reasons for their actions. Knowing that Johnson had overcome his own difficult past and was living for the sake of someone who had passed away made me realize I needed to be that kind of person too. Otherwise, I couldn't truly honor my former subordinate's memory.
I'm glad my feelings got through. Originally, I was attracted to Sarah's skills and had thought about headhunting her. But then I heard she was struggling after losing a subordinate and couldn't focus on anything. I thought meeting Johnson might give Sarah some realization, so I went ahead with the headhunting. I had hoped from the start they could become good partners.
Having come to understand her past, I now feel we can be good partners. Perhaps, being people who have both experienced similar pain, there are things we can understand about each other. Your skills are needed in this company. Let's develop America's #1 game together, saving as many people as we can. The department head and I, now understanding each other better, work diligently every day, leveraging their strengths to create better games.